Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Sickle and we are going to be talking about sentence types today. So there are 4 different main types of sentences. There are simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. Sometimes this can get kind of tricky, so I kind of have a way to help us remember these types. And honestly, you're going to be a successful adult without being able to distinguish the 4 different types that we have. However, it's really important to know what kinds of phrases make up these sentences so you can determine not only if it is a complete thought, it helps us determine where we need punctuation, and it also helps us know if phrases are out of order or how we can rearrange those. So it's going to be a good grammar skill for you to have. Okay, so let's first kind of start off thinking about 2 different types of clauses that make up the sentences that we know and love. So we have independent clauses. I want us to think of independent clauses like adults. Okay, adults. Adults can live on their own. Adults can pay their own bills. Adults can drive. So for independent clauses, they can be a complete thought. They can live in a sentence by themselves. They don't need anybody else, okay? So independent clauses, adults, they can take care of themselves. So here are some examples. My mother drove me to school. That can be a complete thought, complete sentence on its own, okay? So I can put a period here. It's living on its own. It's little happy life. However, I can also add phrases to it. So my mother drove me to school, but my brother rode his bicycle. It does not change the fact that my mother drove me to school is still an independent clause because it could be a sentence by itself if it wanted to. I can also add, since I missed the bus, my mother drove me to school. My mother drove me to school, still an adult living on its own. The opposite clause of this is our subordinate clause, or sometimes they're called dependent clauses. Subordinate clauses or dependent clauses are like the children of the sentence. Just like you need adults to pay your bills, to feed you, to take care of you. You may think that you're grown, but you're not. Just like subordinate clauses. They think that they're grown, but they're not. They need adults, okay? So subordinate clauses is not a complete thought on its own and cannot be a complete sentence by itself. As much as it tries, a subordinate clause cannot be a complete sentence. So examples of these. If the dress is too long. Well, I could never put a period here and end it because that's an incomplete sentence. So I have to add an adult or an independent clause to help out our child or subordinate clause. So if the dress is too long, comma, we will hem it. Or the new food that the veterinarian recommended is good for our hamster. Well, that the veterinarian recommended could never be a sentence on its own. It needs the adult. But one thing I want you to notice is that sometimes our kids or our subordinate clauses interrupt adults or independent clauses, just like in real life. So our adult in this last one is actually the new food is good for our hamster. Okay? Okay, guys, so now what we're going to do is take those independent clauses and subordinate clauses, and we are going to make sentence families out of them, okay? This is the best way that I can find to help me remember not only how to punctuate, but also what makes up these different types of sentences. So our first one is the simple sentence, and y'all learned how to do these in kindergarten. Okay, a simple sentence. This family is just a single adult. So think like a lone person, just like living alone, living his life. In this simple sentence, it will only have one independent clause. So one adult, one independent clause. So you have an example here. We studied the artist Van Gogh and went to an exhibit of his paintings. And a lot of people see this and they think it can't be a simple sentence because it has the word and in it. And does not mean anything, okay? I can have and in any type of sentence, even a simple sentence. Some people like to look at sentences and they see if the sentence is long that it can't be simple, but it can. So looking at this one, we studied the artist Van Gogh and went to an exhibit of his paintings. It just happens that Van Gogh happens to study, or they are studying Van Gogh, and they went. We is still my one subject. They're just doing two different things, okay? I'll show you here later how we can kind of take the same exact sentence and turn it into a different kind of sentence. So I'm a visual person, and so I like to visualize what a simple sentence family would look like in my brain, so then it like stays that way and I can remember, oh my gosh, simple sentences is just one adult or one independent clause. So here's just a picture of single Mrs. Sickle, okay? Not married, no kids, living alone, living her amazing little life. So that's what I'm going to think about when I think of a simple sentence. Next up, compound sentences. Now, a compound sentence, this family is a married couple, okay? A married couple because there are two adults. So it will have two independent clauses, two complete thoughts. So each of these complete thoughts could live on their own if they want to, but they're going to decide to live together in the same sentence. There are 0 subordinate clauses. So 0 subordinate clauses means no children, okay? The couple is going to be married or joined together by one of two ways. So think of like when people get married, they exchange rings. Well, when two independent clauses get married in a compound sentence, they're going to be joined together by a comma and conjunction. So like our fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. It'll be a comma in one of our fanboys, or sometimes it's just a semicolon. But here's the thing, in a compound sentence, when two independent clauses are married together, there has to be punctuation, okay? So you will have to have punctuation in a compound sentence. So an example, this is similar to our sentence from our simple. We studied the artist Van Gogh, comma, and one of our fanboys. Then I add the word we. We went to an exhibit of his paintings. So like the one we saw for simple, it's the same content, except I've added this word we, which means I now have a complete thought here, and I have a complete thought here. So two independent clauses married together, comma, fanboy, it's a compound sentence. So when you think of a compound sentence, maybe think about like married couple, whatever you have in your brain of what that looks like. So I'm going to think of married Mrs. Sickle, and thinking of two adults living together, two independent clauses living together in a sentence. So let's kind of like pause and identify, see if you can identify these sentences as compound or simple. So like looking at number 1, the Amazon River begins in Peru. That's a complete thought. Then I have comma and, that sounds familiar. Then I have it flows across Brazil to the Atlantic Ocean, which is another complete thought. So I have two complete thoughts together, joined together, comma, and. This must be a compound sentence. Then I have this one, which is a really long sentence, but I can't be fooled by that. This river carries more water than any other river and drains about 1/5 of the Earth's entire freshwater supply. I only have one complete thought here. The river is my subject, the river is carrying, and the river is draining. The river is just doing two things, but there's still just one river, okay? So this is a simple sentence. The next sentence family that we have is called a complex sentence. And this family is a single parent with children, okay? So now we're bringing those subordinate clauses in. In a complex sentence, it will have one independent clause and then one or more subordinate clauses. So one or more children. So here's some examples. When I hear classical music, I think of Aunt Sophia. When I hear classical music is my subordinate clause because I could never put a period here and call that a sentence. So this is my child and it needs an adult or an independent clause. I think of Aunt Sophia. Complex sentence. Here's another one where the kid's interrupting like we saw earlier. The Missouri River, which begins in the town of Lake Itasca, Minnesota, is the setting for many Mark Twain stories. Well, my child, which begins in the town of Lake Itasca, Minnesota, could never be a sentence on its own. It needs the rest of this sentence, which is our independent clause. The Missouri River is the setting for many Mark Twain stories. Remember, sometimes those subordinate clauses interrupt our adult sentences. So when you think of a complex sentence, I want you to think of what that family may look like. I chose a picture of a single mom who's going crazy with the kids going around, and that's fine, because remember, we could have more than one subordinate clause in a sentence. So the next one is going to get a little more complicated. Now we have compound and complex sentences. When you think of this sentence family, I want you to think of a family that is a married couple with one or more children, okay? In a married couple with children, you now have two or sometimes more independent clauses, okay? So these are two adults in the same sentence, just like with a compound sentence. However, we also have at least one subordinate clause or at least one child, okay? So here's some examples. Whenever we go on vacation, well, that has to be my subordinate clause because I can never put a period here and say that that could live on its own. So it needs adults. Let's see how many adults we have. Our neighbors mow our yard. There's an adult. Ooh, look, comma, and because they're married together. They collect our mail. Another complete thought, another independent clause. So we have married couple with a kid. On the next one, all sweep the porch. There's a complete thought. Oh, look, married together, comma, and here's another complete thought. Ben will start supper. And then our kid before mom gets home. Before mom gets home can never live alone, so it is our subordinate clause. We're going to get more practice with this as we delve into writing, and you're going to need to know how to punctuate these sentences. It's also a great idea to try to use multiple variety of these sentences in our writing, which is just going to make you the best writer you can be.